Getting ready to go live on Facebook,
Okay.
and I think that we are live. So, a big, huge, cheery welcome to the wonderful author, Melissa Mwai. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mel. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I should say to our listeners that I'm in the middle of a war, and there's always the chance that we'll have air sirens, and then I will have to skedaddle and we'll have to reschedule. But let's be optimistic. And I've been waiting for months to interview you. So Melissa, before let's first of all show your two new books that we're going to concentrate on today. So wave first of all your history of jazz, which I'm
Okay.
very keen on, being a jazz musician myself.
Yeah.
Lovely book. And the other one about friendship,
Yep.
I Can Make a Friend. And
hmm
we're going to talk about both of those and your journey to becoming a traditionally published author. But first, I want to welcome everybody to the Children's Literature Channel, the New Books Network, which I'm lucky to host. And I want to thank Vivian Kirkfield, who brought us together, because you were one of the winners of the 50 Precious Word Contest.
Yes, it's a fun contest that Vivian hosts every year. And the genesis, I think, from her being a picture book writer was what type of story can you tell in a short amount of words? And it's been a fabulous resource for the kidlit community, and I'm honored to have been one of the winners.
Yeah, and this is one of the celebrations of your award. Do you have the poem handy? It's such a lovely poem.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can read it
I should have asked you
to
to have it
it's
ready.
okay. It's okay. I'll pull it up right now. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So it's called The Art Hero. And just for a little context, I was inspired by a dream my daughter had about basically being able to realize you are in the dream and the power that you have in your dreams. So that's kind of the genesis of this story. So it's called The Art Hero. In my nightmare, my friends are trapped inside paintings. From spiky ink, my enemy emerges. You can't save them. At first, I'm scared, but I remember this is my dream. My enemy turns into a paintbrush. I paint my friends free, dancing under rainbows, and I'm not done yet.
That's so lovely. And
Thank you.
this is what brings us together is poetry, and children's literature is some kind of poetry, at least in my eyes and in Vivian's too, I'm sure. So, Melissa, a few words about these two books. Which would you rather start with?
Why don't we start with History of Jazz? That
History of Jazz, published just last year by DK, right? Which is
hmm
belongs now to Penguin Random House. Yay! And a few words about this book. Such a lovely book for children on something I love very much.
Yeah, the History of Jazz came to my desk as part of a package. I worked with a Wonder Lab, and they gave me several titles to choose from because DK was revamping their Super Reader line, which is the one with the red cover. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this jazz book. I love music. I love jazz. And it was such a great book to write to. And I obviously had the best soundtrack because I could listen to so many fabulous artists. So like half of the book is a playlist. And I think I took over our family's Spotify account. Ella Fitzgerald would pop up randomly.
We have her autograph somewhere in the house, by the way.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's another story. When you interview me, I'll tell you the story
Okay.
of Ella
Okay.
Fitzgerald. But we saw her perform in 1982. Yeah, keep going, keep going. So, how do you? how do you write a story for the educational market? You have a background, we'll go back to this. You have a background in education. You taught preschool for 10 years, but how do you do this? How do you get these gigs? How do you write the stories? Um,
Mm.
what's it all about?
Yeah, so the educational market, at least in the US, is based a lot on connections. So, back when I first started writing, I knew some folks at Nat Geo, and Nat Geo regularly puts out calls for freelancers. And that Nat Geo um, call for submission basically kind of set the ball rolling for all these other jobs. And I had a package kind of ready to go, basically a nonfiction book of my choice. And anyone who's interested in writing in the educational market, the first thing I would recommend is, grab whatever book you really love, flip through the cover and look at that metadata because it's going to tell you, who produced the book, who was the editors, if there was a book packager, find those people. And if you are, even if you're not agented, you can find out whether those packagers allow for submissions. And that just includes having a story that matches that line or stories that match that line for that particular age group. And that's basically what I did. I had nonfiction book researched and I put something together and that's what I sent off. It wasn't perfect, but it just gave a sense of
Was
I
that on
can match.
was that on jazz?
No, this was on the golfer Chichi Rodriguez, a Puerto Rican golfer, a fabulous person, and I just wrote about a chapter or two of his life story. And funny enough, several years before that, I had submitted to Vivian's 50 Precious Words contest, and I also won um, a story based off of the Chichi Rodriguez beginning, that nonfiction sample that then led me to jobs later on. So just like kind of full circle that
And was that
Vivian's
published in
50.
the end? Was that published in the
No,
end?
no, it wasn't,
So,
but
so
it
that's the irony because I think I would know it because I went over your bio and I haven't seen that book.
oh
So
no.
what made you is a story that hasn't been published yet.
Exactly. And you don't know, like, when you're doing these things as a writer, you don't know where they're going to land, what the connections are going to bring you. So being willing to put yourself out there, to say yes to things, to, even the small things that don't have like monetary prizes or um, you never know where that's going to lead you. So
For
this
sure.
little 50 word poem about Chichi Rodriguez led me to writing a work sample that led me to
To
getting the
another
Nat Geo.
story, to another
Mm-hmm.
story. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Vivian's 50 Precious Little Words is not such a little contest.
No.
It's helped a lot of people find agents, get publishing deals, and Vivian is terrific. Let's go back to little Melissa. I'm tempted to call you Mel because I know that your best friends call you Mel, and we're not there yet. Maybe in our next interview. Um, I just call you
Sure
once. Hi,
thing.
Mel. Hi, Mel.
That's fine. Mel and Mel. We can do it that way.
Okay. We won't this time. We'll leave it for next time. So I want you to talk about little Mel, little Melissa. Did you know that when you were little, tiny, thought that you would be writing children's books for the nation?
Yes. I did. I did. I always wanted to write. I remember finding a electric typewriter in my someone in my family had it and I begged my parents to let me keep it. And I felt like such a published pro because like my my handwriting was atrocious, but when I typed it up, it felt like a real book. Yes, I always wanted to write. Um, that and draw. Like I drew comics. So between the two, I was like, I got to do something in this creative field at some point.
Okay, and did this lead you to a certain kind of education in writing? I know you have a master's degree. Tell me
Yeah,
about your education.
So I studied English and creative writing at Colby College and taught English. And then I moved on to library science because I loved reading. But during the 2009 recession, it was very difficult to get any jobs in that field. So I wound up going to education tech. And I was always in that lateral education field because I loved books, I loved children. Um, so it was natural progression that I get there, but just not a straight line. And I think that's true for so many writers, authors, and illustrators. We don't start there. You work your way there.
Absolutely. But you know, you mentioned connections, but you have to write really well. Um, Tell us about your own personal story. How did you break into the traditional publishing sector?
So it was a couple of things. I started out, like I said, as an English major, and I assumed like, hey, I can do this. This is, of course I can write kids' books. I wrote a thesis. This is no problem.
No brainer.
No brainer. So easy. And I remember submitting to some literary magazines, and I was like, oh yes, I'm gonna get published. And the editor wrote back to me and was like, this is great. Now let's change it. And I was like, "What? What do you mean I have to edit this? I thought the story was perfect." I did not edit it, and I kind of feel bad about that. Years later, I should have, and I was just like, well, maybe it's not the time. And I wrote back to the editor, and we just kind of dropped it. And um, so fast forward, I've spent years kind of working on desk drawer manuscripts with friends and poetry and all sorts of things. And I saw this contest by Leon Lowe, the New Voices contest, and I decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to write for kids. And to prepare for that, I joined Storyteller Academy, which was perfect because as like a new parent, I didn't have the time to go to a physical class to learn how to write for kids. So having something that was available online um, was perfect for me. And through that academy, I took the author track and the illustrator track and realized there was so much I needed to learn. It wasn't just a matter of I know how to write. It was a whole different ball game to write
So,
for
so Melissa,
kids.
I'm just going to jump in here because this is
Yeah.
also my story and a lot of other authors. You know, we have a lot of hubris at the beginning. We think we know everything. We think we can know, yeah. And then was there like a moment that you said, "Oh my goodness, I'm not as good as I think I am. I really need to."
Oh, yep. Yep. My very first in-person critique, I wrote a story about a kid who was basically um trying to be convinced to eat their vegetables. And I was like, I had the child protagonist. They solved their problem. I thought it was great. And the instructor, Ari, was like, this is preachy. This is not gonna work. And the whole like premise of the class was you have to sit, listen to the critique, answer questions, and then you go away and you take away what you can from it. And I remember after that class was going, wow, I thought I was ready to go. I thought because this is the story I was going to submit to the contest, and it was not ready. It was so not ready. And I remember saying, if I can't take this critique, there's no way I'm going to make it, right? So I went back, I edited, wound up creating new stories, and maybe about 2 years later, I took the same class over again, submitted a completely different story, and Ari was like, "This is something, this it still needed work, but it was leaps, and I felt like, okay, I learned from that and all the other courses that I took that it wasn't just because it's short doesn't mean it's easy."
And did you join SCBWI
I
critique
did.
groups?
I joined SCBWI. Critique groups are lifeblood. Like, if I didn't have a critique group, which I still am in a couple, I wouldn't be writing today because we all went through a global pandemic, and that changed our brain chemistry for everybody. Like that was, collective trauma. Um, and having that consistent group of people going, hey, what are you making? How can we help you make it better? That was key. Um, Wound up networking with a lot of folks over the years. Some of them were for short sprints, like um, the Black Creators in Kidlit. Like I connected with that group. I connected with like I said, SCBWI, 12 by 12, like all of these groups, which may sound familiar to you. Like some of them I did for a short time, and some of them I'm still kind of connected with. But those were very instrumental into me getting, eventually landing an agent and, getting books
So,
published. But if I,
hold on,
yeah,
Melissa.
yeah,
Landing
yeah,
an
yeah,
agent, landing an
yeah.
agent, the one in 1,000. How does that happen?
Um, Mine is so different story. I don't know.
They're all different.
No, it
It,
totally is. So
it might listen. It's such a rare thing to find an agent that it has to be a real, a real good story. So tell us.
the agent, so I work with Jackie Lipson at the Tobias Literary Agency. I met her when she was basically the owner of Ravenquill Literary, and we got connected through an interview I did with my critique partner, of all things. So my critique partner is a published author illustrator herself, Amanda Davis, and I met her through Storyteller. So I'm telling you, like Mel, like it literally is like you just don't know where the connections are going to lead you. So
Mhm.
I do this interview with Amanda, and she has a series called Rising Stars, and she's highlighting people who are pre-published, seeking representation, and I just share about my work, my illustrations, my stories. And Jackie sees it, like, because I posted it like on, Twitter. And she's like, I like what you did. Do you have a package? And I was like, yeah, I do. Did I? I think I did. I I had enough of a package. Um, but yeah, it's so funny that I didn't even query her. I had been querying people because of some other mentorships I've done, and didn't work at the time. And Jackie reached out to me.
There's nothing like rejection, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put the manuscripts away, work on new stuff. I'm gonna stop querying. And then it happened to me. Like I didn't even look for it, which was amazing.
That's amazing. That's incredible. And when was this?
2021.
So
20
Corona time.
yes, so
And
2021, right
and
before I
so
started the Nat Geo project.
and you hit the ground running. How did you decide, or how did this happen with the education market? I mean,
Um,
I read your poem. I'd be intrigued to learn about your fictional work. I'm sure you have all kinds of manuscripts.
I do.
And in the meantime, you've gone into this genre. How did that happen?
Well, the like I said, the Nat Geo kind of happened through the connections, but I've always loved research. Like, hey, I did, willingly an MLIS because I love research. Um, I think if the opportunity wasn't presented to me, I probably would have stood in the fiction lane, but I enjoy it so much that it took me a couple of years to kind of get to the idea that, maybe I should focus more on nonfiction or nonfiction elements in everything I do. Um, so yeah, it wasn't something I knew I was going to get into. I knew I was going to get into writing, but my academic background um, made sense for me that, as many essays as I've written, made sense for me to feel comfortable in the nonfiction lane.
Okay,
Oh,
so Melissa, it's learning about it, reading the jackets, the interior, finding out who's who, finding an agent, and I guess all your education prepared you for level writing, where you have to use a certain vocabulary, certain um, this is also a talent of yours. But what I'm interested in is whether these titles, and you've already written 4 or 5 that I know of, the titles are ones that you pitch, or they come to you and they say, "Well, do you want to write about jazz, classical music, ballet, opera?" And you say, "Jazz."
Both, both. So depending upon the line, um, the editors will have a series of titles that they're looking for, and then you say, I'm interested in. So like the jazz Puerto Rican childhood and the Harlem one, they gave me a list of like 10 titles, and I could pick, and those were the ones I picked. Um, the I Can Make a Friend, this one was interesting because it was a brand new educational line, and they explained to me they wanted to have nonfiction elements with socio emotional learning, but I can write anything I want. And I had the opportunity to help shape the line, which is so neat. Um, I got to help figure out the structure of the book, um, certain elements, like there's a pledge that readers can take at the end to make the world a better place. And that particular
Can,
pledge get oh,
can
go
you
ahead.
show this? And you've also
Oh,
given
yeah, yeah.
examples.
Oh,
There's
yes,
all
yes,
kinds
yes.
of surprising things in
So,
this book. You talk about
so,
bullying.
this this pledge here. Let me move my hand. Okay, there we go. Reverse mirror. So, this pledge here is basically something that encourages the kids
Now,
to.
Melissa, please read it. Not
Oh, yes,
everybody
yes,
can
yes.
watch us.
Yes, yes,
The
I
NBN
will.
pod, the
Yes.
NBN podcast is a podcast.
So I will read it. So it encourages kids to take what they've learned and do something with it. So this is what it says. It's I can do it pledge. Now you've read about friendship or whatever the book is going to be about. Grab a sheet of paper and make a sign. Write about what you will do and use this pledge as a guide. It says you put your name. I can, is an I can do it kid. So Melissa is an I can do it kid. Melissa did one thing. So maybe I was kind to a friend to help them put their school books away or whatever it is on this date to be more, you know, kind to the world, friendly, positive, whatever your change is. Um, so what I loved about this idea was that it took what you read or what you're asking the kids to read about and then turn it into an action that they can do, um, for
And
whatever age appropriate.
it's great for classrooms, and it's great for personal growth. And so now I have to ask you the question because you have a hand and a foot in this book. You are a, can I call you a minority person? I don't know what the proper two few words
Yes, you
about
could
that.
you could come you could Puerto Rican, that's fine. You could go with very specific.
No, tell me because I don't want to be
Yeah, Puerto Rican woman is fine.
okay. And but you also have a ADHD, which makes you also neurodiverse. I was never diagnosed, but we talked about this before the program, and I have exactly the same issues that you do. It can also be a blessing, but it makes us different. Were you different as a kid?
Yes, yes,
Did you
I
have did you
was.
have friend issues?
Um, I only had a few friends and they were very close, but it was very hard when life transitions happened. So when I went from middle school to high school, I learned later on that people thought I was very like, which is so odd, very antisocial because I didn't want to open up right away. It took a long time for people to get to know me.
So I have this theory that we our writing is some kind of talking to our 5-year-old, or in your case, because it's level 3, maybe 8-year-old Melissa, and working things out. Did I get that right or wrong in your case?
Yep, yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. I did have challenges making friends. I was that kid that would read a book on the sidelines all the time, and um to the point of I'd be going up and down stairs with a book in my face. And nobody knew what I was thinking because so many things were going on in the brain. But I don't think 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds or whatever want to ask about that.
As somebody who morphed from not nonfiction as a scientist to fiction as an author, I would love to see someday how you would channel that young Melissa into a fictional story. Um, I would love to see that. Let's talk now about your other brilliant book, The History of Jazz, and how you did research on this and how you developed the book, because then I have some specific questions for you.
Okay. So, the history of jazz, I'm trying to recall. I don't think the editors gave me a very deep outline. I think there was a handful of things I had to hit. But the rest was you could fill in the blank. Like I could decide the structure of the book, and for me, it made sense to go by decades, um, because there's a lot to cover. And with a lot of these educational market books, you have a very specific word count you have to hit because of the line that you're falling into. So this one was about 9,000 words or so. I could have written way more than 9,000 words on anything.
So
Um, yeah.
what got cut? Because it's a history of jazz, but not everything is in there.
hmm hmm
Some of my heroes are there. Some of my heroes, like the Gershwins, aren't there. Who decided who makes the cut? I mean, it was clear to me jazz is huge. You couldn't, encompass the
hmm
whole book in several thousand words, the whole
Right.
area.
Well, the focus I was given was to focus on African American creators, while
Mhm,
jazz is very the music form itself has been
mhm,
embraced by people of many different cultures.
mhm.
The emphasis was the either the early creators that we know, like the big names, like Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, but also bring to light those other creators that don't get as much spotlight, um,
But
and go
Melissa, so
from there.
who dictates that this is going to be mostly on Afro-American jazz luminaries? This is the
That was
editor.
that was directly from DK. That was their goal for the book.
That's really interesting. Why would they do this? And I'm from Israel. I don't understand. For me, it's so obvious that jazz is black. It's Afro-American. And in the last chapter, you did something wonderful, which is you talked about the influence of, you talked about a Club de France, and you talked about a João Gilberto and Bossa Nova. Jazz, I think that part of its message is its universality.
Well, I think they're coming from the perspective of, well, I think for adults, it's very much coded as historically black, ethnically black. That's where the culture comes from. But to children, they don't have that context.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I had to keep reminding myself when I was
So,
doing the writing.
So this I find, this is what I find strange, and you've elucidated it for me because it's something that was always so obvious. I mean, rock and roll is black music, jazz is black music, and the ability of other people to connect with it is for me what makes it so marvelous. Maybe that's just me. You feel the same way too?
I don't know. Uh, I haven't really given that, much thought, to be honest, Mel. But I do think, yeah, just kind of going back to what I said, I do think the things that as adults we've picked up over the years, um, while it's present in our culture, um, being more explicit about it, there's nothing wrong with being more explicit about where the
Well,
connections lie. Yeah.
I think it's terrific given what you're saying, that I mean, kids do not know. Maybe it's something that I didn't know as a kid. Let me give you an example. Well, you're like, you could be my daughter or granddaughter, but when I was a kid growing up with the Beatles, a lot of the songs that they sang at the beginning were covers of black musicians,
Really?
wonderful black musicians. Oh,
Oh, didn't
absolutely. I
know that.
mean,
Didn't know
well,
that.
we can take this off. This is an interview about, yeah, but songs that I thought that they wrote, like you really got to hold on me, Smokey Robinson or Anna, go to him, Arthur Alexander.
Hmm.
And I was flabbergasted to learn as an adult that these songs were written by black musicians. Can I say black? I don't even know what's proper. Afro-American.
It
Um,
depends. To be fair, it depends where they're from. So if you're talking about folks that are, outside of the U.S. that weren't born, that weren't born on U.S. air, then black is more generally, and
ah,
that works more. Yeah, yeah.
okay, I beg forgiveness because I live in Israel and I don't know.
It's fine. Yeah.
But I was, as a musician, I was surprised. So
Hmm.
maybe when I was a kid, I didn't know that either, and that makes it so important what you've done. And I'm going through that, and I see like so many of my heroes. Duke Ellington
Hmm.
is a
Hmm.
huge hero of mine, and he's there. Of course, Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and so many people. And do you think how are kids going to relate to this music? It's 100 years old, 80 years old. Um, Even bebop is 70 years old. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and I'm thinking about this book in context of how like my kids listen to music now, which is, through streaming services. Like it's I think books like this are even more important because kids are have less access to um the same type of cultural influences. Like everyone's watching something different on YouTube or listening to something different on Spotify or whatever your streaming choice is. So educational books are going to play an even more significant role because it's giving them a common language that kids aren't connecting to now. Like nobody's watching the same movies or things like that. So I think it's awesome that, now they can go in and grab the playlist and listen to this stuff. Um, because they might not run into it. Um, they might not run into it based on what they're where they're listening.
Melissa, does your book have a playlist on Spotify?
It does. It does. It has a has a playlist on Spotify. I linked to it on my website as well. Um, but yeah, there's just so many. Like funny story, I was listening to some neighbors of mine and they were like, "Oh, we need to put this song on." There was some term I'm not going to use because I don't love the slang, but they were like, "You need to listen to this song." And I'm like, "Okay." And they put it on and it's Tears for Fears. Everybody rules the world, but that's not what it was called. They had no idea. And the animation on top of the video was awful. But like the kids don't know where the original sources of these musical inspirations are coming from. So books like this kind of help